they went back to their roots. They began to refocus. They doubled down on gaming. They improved their cameras, now used in most smartphones worldwide. They pushed deeper into music and film. They invested in sensors, AI, and cinematic technology. They didn't try to beat the world in every category. They chose to own what they were born to own: emotion, vision, experience. And that brought them back to the top. Today, they are one of the top 5 biggest media companies in the world. They make over $90 billion every year. They own film studios, music divisions, gaming entertainment divisions. They sell to over 190 countries. They create movies, music, cameras, televisions, and world-class gaming experiences. They're behind many songs you hear, games you play, and films you love. But more importantly, they are a symbol. Final life lessons from this story 1. You don't need everything to start. They started after war. They had no money, no building, no support, but they had a dream, and that was enough. 2. If they reject you, rebuild yourself. They were betrayed by Nintendo, but instead of crying, they created the gaming console. That betrayal made them billionaires. 3. Never put your name down for money. They refused to sell their radio without their brand name. That decision built a global identity. Always protect your name, your values, your vision. 4. Fail, try again, then fly. Their first rice cooker failed. Their phones didn't succeed. Some movies flopped, but they always came back stronger. Failure is part of every success story. 5. Lead with emotion, not just machines. They didn't just build technology. They built experiences, music, games, and moments that made people feel alive. That's what made them different. 6. Protect your originality. They didn't copy. They created the first Japanese radio, the personal music player, the gaming console. They made what never existed before. Do the same in your life. The numbers that tell the story: annual revenue, over $90 billion. Market value, over $110 billion. Gaming division alone, worth $45+ billion. Music plus films combined, worth $25+ billion. Total employees, more than 110,000 worldwide. From one burnt room to a company richer than 90% of the countries on Earth, this is not just a success story. It's a miracle made by belief. If this company taught us one thing, it's that your start does not decide your finish. You can start in pain. You can start in silence. You can start with empty hands. But if your dream is strong, you can still reach the stars. Your journey begins now. So please, never give up. Protect your name. Do what others think is impossible and build something that makes people feel something, just like they did. Your circumstances today don't determine your destination tomorrow. The burnt building can become the foundation. The rejection can become your motivation. The betrayal can become your breakthrough. Remember, every empire started with a single decision. Every innovation started with someone saying, "What if?" You don't need permission to become great. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need everyone's approval. You just need to start. And refuse to stop. If they can rise from literal ashes to build a multi-billion-dollar empire that touches billions of lives, what's stopping you from building yours? The world is waiting for what only you can create. The question is, will you let doubt stop you, or will you let your dream drive you? The choice, as it always has been, is yours. Now go, build, create, inspire. Your story is waiting to be written. And just sell a console. They sold a new experience. The advertising said, "Live in your world. Play in ours." The console allowed gamers to play longer games, watch real cutscenes, save progress, feel like they were part of a movie. It was fun, serious, and addictive. And just sell a console. They sold a new experience. The advertising said, "Live in your world. Play in ours." The console allowed gamers to play longer games, watch real cutscenes, save progress, feel like they were part of a movie. It was fun, serious, and addictive. Kids loved it. Teenagers loved it. Even adults got hooked. Over 100 million units of the original console sold worldwide. Games became global hits. They made over $60 billion in gaming-related revenue over the years. By 2000, they had officially defeated Nintendo in global console sales. What started as a betrayal turned into the greatest revenge success story in gaming history. Most companies would have given up, but they turned anger into action, rejection into reinvention, betrayal into billion-dollar business. And all of it happened because of one betrayed deal, one quiet genius, one team that refused to quit. The gaming console was no longer just a product. It became a movement, and now they weren't just an electronics company. They were a global entertainment empire. Chapter 5. Building a Kingdom of Stories. The gaming console was not just a win. It was a revolution. They had entered the gaming world as outsiders. They had been betrayed, rejected, humiliated. But now they were the leaders. They had already sold over 100 million gaming consoles. The world loved them, and the world was ready for more. But deep inside their Tokyo office, their top leaders were not celebrating. They were planning something bigger. Akio had once said, "We are not a company that copies others. We are a company that creates the future." And that future was not just electronics. They were about to enter a completely different universe: movies, music, media, magic. By the late 1990s, the world was changing again. People weren't just buying gadgets. They were watching movies, listening to music, playing 3D games, watching animated films, falling in love with stories, and they had a dream. Why should we only build the machine? Let's also control what goes inside the machine. They realized something powerful. If you own the device, you can make money. But if you also own the content, you can build a kingdom. So they made a bold, dangerous, and brilliant move. They decided to buy Hollywood in 1989. They shocked the world by purchasing Columbia Pictures, one of the most famous movie studios in America. Price: $3.4 billion. The world laughed. Critics said, "Why is a Japanese electronics company buying a movie studio? They don't know Hollywood. They will fail." Even some of their own employees were scared. It was a huge risk, but they didn't care. They didn't just want to sell televisions. They wanted to create what people watched on those televisions, so they took control of Columbia and stepped into a world full of actors, directors, scriptwriters, awards, box office battles. They were now in the movie business. At first, they struggled. They made a few movies that failed. They lost millions. Hollywood laughed again, but they didn't quit. They learned. They adapted. They studied what people loved. And soon they started producing blockbusters. Films like Men in Black, Spider-Man, Jumanji, Bad Boys, remakes of classic stories, major franchises. These films didn't just earn money. They became part of pop culture. They built emotional connections. They gave people heroes, stories, and dreams. By the mid-2000s, their film division had become one of the top 5 movie studios in the world. Their films earned billions at the global box office, but they didn't stop with movies. They moved even deeper into music. They already had a small music division, but now they wanted to dominate. So they merged and grew into one of the largest record labels in the world, and they signed some of the biggest artists in history: Michael Jackson, Beyoncé, Adele, Shakira, Justin Timberlake, Harry Styles, Miley Cyrus, Travis Scott, and many more. They were no longer just an electronics brand. They were now shaping the music people loved, the movies people watched, the games people played. They were building a world of emotion, one song, one story at a time. Imagine this. A person wakes up. They turn on their television, watch one of their movies, play a song from their music division, pick up their gaming controller. Game starts with their soundtrack. Save progress on their memory card. They had done the impossible. They were now present in your eyes, your ears, your hands, your heart, and they weren't just selling products. They were crafting experiences. Even with all their success, they never became lazy. They kept experimenting. They built Blu-ray disc technology, high-definition televisions, professional cameras used in Hollywood, noise-canceling headphones, robotic companions, virtual reality systems, smartphones with advanced screens. They also invested heavily in artificial intelligence, robotics, and digital imaging. They believed, if people laugh at your idea today, they will thank you tomorrow. That mindset built their empire. By now, they had over 110,000 employees worldwide, offices in more than 180 countries, revenue of over $85 billion per year, multiple billion-dollar divisions, gaming, music, films, imaging, electronics, but more than numbers. They had built a name that meant creativity, quality, emotion, respect. And they did it not by copying others, but by leading again and again. Chapter 6. The Truth Behind the Empire. Their success didn't come from just machines. It came from their culture. Inside the company, every employee is taught to think like an artist, work like an engineer, lead like an entrepreneur, care like a family member. They give their people freedom to experiment, permission to fail, opportunities to grow. It's not just a job. It's a mission to improve lives through creativity and technology. Now they're working on next-generation gaming systems, smart wearable music technology, film studios in new countries, global music talent expansion, virtual production for films, AI-driven sound and editing tools, gaming universes mixed with film and music. They're creating a future where one story can be a game, a movie, and a song all at once, all powered by them. They are building worlds, not just products. Chapter 7. The Legacy. Built on courage, cracks, and a camera of dreams, they had now become something bigger than a company. They were a storyteller, a builder, a connector, a symbol. They had entered every part of the world and every part of the human heart. From the streets of Tokyo to the skyscrapers of New York, from the hands of children playing games to the ears of teenagers wearing headphones, on buses to the eyes of movie lovers crying in dark theaters. They were everywhere, but behind all the cameras, screens, music, and machines was a truth most people didn't see. And today, in this final chapter, you will see it. Their success was not made from shiny gadgets. It was built from broken floors, rejected ideas, burnt buildings, sleepless nights, empty bank accounts, and tears nobody saw. Masaru started alone in a burned-out department store with only tools and belief. Akio traveled to a country that distrusted his language and sold a dream. Through hand gestures, Ken got rejected, pushed aside, and laughed at, but built a gaming empire with determination in his heart and fire in his soul. They didn't have luck. They didn't have comfort. They didn't have safety. But they had something more powerful. They refused to stop. Their cameras didn't just capture pictures, they captured moments. Their games didn't just give fun, they gave escape. They gave courage. They gave another chance to the broken kid who felt like a loser. Their music wasn't just sound, it was healing. They didn't create machines. They created meaning, and that's what made them different. Now let's talk about what most people don't know. Akio, the face of the company, gave his whole life to the enterprise. He believed in global peace through global creativity. He didn't want the company to be Japanese. He wanted it to be human. In 1993, after a long career, Akio had a stroke. He was forced to retire. He couldn't speak clearly. He couldn't lead anymore. The man who once stood on world stages was now quiet in a hospital bed, but until his last breath, he still read company reports, tracked news, and smiled when the company succeeded. In 1999, Akio passed away. He didn't live to see the full future of their next-generation gaming system or certain franchises' billion-dollar empire, but he died with one truth inside his chest. I gave everything. And now the world listens when we speak. As they grew into a giant, something else quietly grew too: pressure, competition, pain. In the 2010s, companies like Apple, Samsung, and other giants began dominating the phone and gadget world. Their smartphone sales began to fall. They couldn't compete in the mobile wars. They shut down stores. They laid off employees. Some people started saying they're not what they used to be. The same company that once changed music and movies was now losing ground in tech. It was painful. It was heartbreaking. Even loyal fans started to walk away, but they didn't quit. And the American company, impressed by his courage, agreed to keep their name. They received their first large U.S. order soon after. 100,000 transistor radios worth over $2 million shipped across America in waves. And guess what? They sold out in just a few months. Teenagers loved the size. Adults loved the price. Stores loved the profits. Suddenly, their name became something everyone wanted to know. Akio decided it was time. They would now have an office in the U.S. He rented a tiny room in New York City. One desk, one phone, one assistant, but it was their first global step. He worked day and night answering calls, managing orders, building relationships. Back in Tokyo, Masaru handled production. He expanded their small factory, hired more workers, improved quality. Together, they built a bridge between Tokyo and New York, a connection that would help them grow from a startup to a global giant. But Akio wasn't satisfied. He said, "We must not become complacent. One good product is not enough. We must create something the world has never seen." Their engineers were challenged to do more. Better sound, smaller size, longer battery life, new innovations. Chapter 3. The device they called useless. The year turned to 1979. The company was no longer small. It had become a rising name across the globe. People were starting to say, "Have you heard of that Japanese brand? Their radios are amazing," but inside their Tokyo headquarters, Akio remained restless. He had seen success. He had opened an office in America. They had made millions in radio sales, but now he was searching for what's next. He knew the truth. If they didn't create something new, they'd become history. They were making televisions, recorders, audio devices, but none of it felt revolutionary anymore. Akio wanted to do something unbelievable, something nobody else had done. One day, one of their engineers, Norio Oga, came with a complaint. He loved listening to classical music, but he hated carrying bulky cassette players while traveling. He told Akio, "Why don't we build a small cassette player just for headphones? No speakers, no record button, just music, just listening." Akio paused. A cassette player with no speakers, no ability to record music. To many people, that sounded useless. Even inside the company, many executives laughed. They said, "Why would anyone carry a device that can only play music and nothing else? And who wants to wear headphones while walking? People want big sound, not private sound." But Akio saw something different. He didn't just see a machine. He saw a new lifestyle. He imagined a young person walking through the city, music in their ears, lost in their own world. He imagined people listening privately on trains, in parks, in their rooms. This wasn't just about music. It was about freedom. So Akio said, "Let's do it." Their engineers got to work. They started with their existing cassette recorder. They removed the recording system, the loudspeaker, the microphone, and replaced it with a stereo amplifier, a headphone jack, lightweight materials. They tested dozens of sizes, shapes, buttons. The challenge was clear. It must be small enough to fit in your hand, light enough to carry anywhere, and strong enough to survive daily use. After months of trials, they created the first prototype. It was small, battery-powered, crystal clear in sound, fit perfectly in a pocket or bag. Akio wanted a name that felt fun, light, and modern. They considered various names in different countries. But finally, they settled on something simpler, a name combining walk, movement, portability with the individual user. They printed the first batch, 30,000 units packaged neatly, sold for around $150 at launch. They sent them to music stores in Japan and waited. At first, nobody bought them. People walked past the product. Even journalists mocked it. One newspaper headline said it was a step backwards in music. Company executives panicked. They had invested millions into the idea. Was it a mistake? Akio didn't panic. He said people don't understand this product because they've never seen anyone use it. So he launched a radical marketing plan. They hired young models and actors, gave them free players, and sent them to parks, subways, beaches, college campuses. They wore bright clothes, danced, smiled, and used the device in public. Passers-by noticed. They saw people walking with music in their ears. They looked happy, stylish, cool. Suddenly, it became a trend. People wanted to feel what these people were feeling, and within 2 months they sold out all 30,000 units. Orders came from every direction: Europe, USA, Canada, Australia, Asia. They couldn't keep up with demand. By the end of the first year, they had sold over 500,000 units. Within 5 years, they sold over 10 million worldwide. Eventually, the number would grow to over 400 million sold, generating billions of dollars in revenue. But more than money, they had done something no other company had done before. They had changed human behavior. Before this invention, music was shared in rooms, played on speakers. You couldn't listen privately. Music was for groups, not individuals. After this invention, people walked, jogged, traveled with music. Music became personal. Headphones became a fashion. The idea of my playlist, my world was born. They had invented personal music. Today, when you use streaming services or put on earbuds or create your own playlist, it all started with that one invention. Now, they weren't just a company that made electronics. They were a brand that stood for innovation, independence, youth, culture, personal identity. People didn't just want their products. They wanted to be part of their world, and Akio became a global icon. He was invited to business conferences, universities, innovation forums. People started calling him one of the great business minds of Japan. They were flying high. Their personal music device had changed the world. It was not just a product, it had become a symbol of culture. But Akio and the team were not resting. They had already changed the way people listened to music. Now they wanted to change the way people play. They wanted to enter a new battlefield, the world of video games. Chapter 4. The Betrayal That Built a Kingdom. Why video games? In the early 1990s, gaming was becoming more than just a toy. Children loved it. Teenagers were addicted, and a new industry was being born, one that would soon be worth billions. Companies like Nintendo and Sega were leading. But they had never made a video game console. Many inside the company thought it was too risky. They said, "We make music players and televisions. We don't belong in gaming." But one young engineer inside the company didn't agree. His name was Ken Kutaragi. Ken was a quiet genius. He loved games. He loved technology. And most of all, he loved pushing limits. He watched his daughter play Nintendo games and thought to himself, what if we make something better? What if we make a gaming system so powerful that people feel like they're inside the game? At the time, he was just an engineer, not a leader, not a decision maker, but he had a dream and he had an idea. They didn't want to jump into gaming alone. So they went to Nintendo, the king of the gaming world at the time, and together they made a deal. The plan was Nintendo would make a new console. They would help build the CD-ROM system inside it. This would allow games to be played from discs, not cartridges. They would also make a version of their own. It seemed like the perfect partnership. They started working. They built prototypes. Millions of dollars were spent. Then came the big announcement day, 1991 Consumer Electronics Show. Their executives arrived. They prepared the stage. They were ready to tell the world, together, we're creating the future of gaming. But what happened next was a brutal betrayal. Just hours before their big reveal, Nintendo went on stage and announced something shocking. We are now partnering with Philips. Not them, for our next console. Their executives were sitting in the audience. Their jaws dropped. The company they trusted, worked with, built for, had cut them off publicly without warning. It was not just a business betrayal. It was a humiliation. Millions of dollars lost, months of work thrown away, and worst of all, the entire industry watched them get embarrassed. Most companies would walk away, but not them. Ken walked into the meeting room. He looked at the team. Everyone was silent, angry, embarrassed. He said, let's not fight them with words. Let's fight them with power. Let's build our own console, and let's make it the greatest console the world has ever seen. The room was quiet. Then someone whispered, let's do it. That moment was the birth of their gaming system. They gave Ken the green light, but with one condition. This must be different. Not just a toy. It must be a full entertainment machine. Ken and his team worked like mad scientists. They built and rebuilt the console again and again. They focused on 3D graphics, fast processing speed, CD-ROM game loading, memory cards, epic sound quality. They didn't want to copy Nintendo. They wanted to destroy the old way of gaming. Finally, in December 1994, they launched their first gaming console in Japan. Price, $299. Design, sleek, gray, simple. Controller, comfortable, easy to use. Graphics, revolutionary, and the result? It sold out in hours. People lined up in the snow, in the rain, to get one. Stores couldn't keep up with demand, and then they took it global. In 1995, their console launched in North America, Europe, Australia. The Unstoppable Rise, How Two Dreamers Built a Global Empire from Rubble. Welcome, friends. What you're about to hear isn't just another business tale. This is the story of two individuals who stood in the ashes of devastation with nothing. No wealth, no shelter, no certainty. Yet from those ruins, they constructed something that transformed our world forever. This is the journey of how belief, persistence, and vision created an empire that would redefine entertainment, technology, and culture itself. And here's what makes this special. You won't just feel motivated. You'll discover timeless principles about resilience. You'll learn how refusal becomes fuel, and yes, you'll sharpen your English skills in the most engaging way possible. So stay with me until the very end, because what unfolds here is nothing short of extraordinary. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Rising from the Ashes. The year stood at 1945. Humanity had just emerged from its most catastrophic conflict, the Second World War. In Tokyo, Japan, devastation stretched in every direction. Structures lay crumbled. Explosive devices had leveled entire neighborhoods. Countless souls wandered without homes, sustenance, or hope for tomorrow. Among this sea of uncertainty walked two Japanese men. The first was Masaru Ibuka, a brilliant engineer. The second was Akio Morita, a visionary physicist. On the surface, they seemed quite different, but they shared something that made them formidable, an unshakable dream. Masaru had been fascinated by mechanics since childhood. He would disassemble radios and timepieces, not from destructive impulse but from pure curiosity. He operated under a simple belief: if something already exists, it can be improved. During wartime, he'd applied his talents to military electronics. But when Japan surrendered, everything vanished. His employment, his city, his certainty about the future, all gone. Rather than surrender to despair, Masaru gathered whatever tools he could find and began creating again. His workshop, a cramped space inside a damaged retail building in Tokyo, that modest beginning would spark what eventually became their empire. The room measured barely 60 square meters. Imagine a small kitchen. No climate control, no proper windows, just scorched bricks, broken furniture, and enormous ambitions. Masaru called it the Tokyo Telecommunications Research Institute. In reality, it was simply a damaged space housing a determined genius. He started building whatever he could: radios, electrical components, tools, various devices. But he understood he couldn't accomplish this alone. Akio Morita represented everything Masaru wasn't. Where Masaru worked quietly behind the scenes, Akio possessed the communication skills, the vision, the leadership presence. He came from a prosperous family of traditional beverage makers. His father expected him to inherit the family enterprise, but Akio yearned for something greater. He believed Japan could become recognized globally for innovation. When Akio read about Masaru's small laboratory in a newspaper, something clicked. They met, and both men recognized it immediately. Individually, they were talented, but together they could be unstoppable. The war had just concluded. Japan's economy lay in ruins. People struggled with hunger, homelessness, and hopelessness. Nobody cared about electronics at that moment. Nobody believed Japan could produce quality technology, not even the Japanese themselves. But these two men believed something radical. They wouldn't follow the world's lead. They would create it. They wanted to establish a company unlike anything Japan had witnessed. Not merely to generate profit, but to restore hope to their people. Their first product? A rice cooking device. And it failed spectacularly. The rice burned consistently. Temperature control didn't exist. Not a single unit sold, but they didn't stop. Their response? We failed. What of it? Let's try again. They continued building, testing, experimenting relentlessly until they spotted a new opportunity. During those years, American-made radios dominated everywhere. Japan lacked the capability to produce its own. No transistors, no facilities, no reputation. But Masaru had an idea: create Japan's first transistor radio. Everyone scoffed. Experts declared it impossible. Government officials claimed they lacked the necessary components. Americans said their patents couldn't be copied, but these objections meant nothing to them. They worked through days and nights. They studied everything about radio technology. They sourced parts from questionable markets, salvaged broken components, used leftover wiring. Sleep became secondary. Proper meals became rare. They were consumed by their mission, and then, after months of intense effort and struggle, they achieved it. They created Japan's first transistor radio. Now they possessed a product, but they needed an identity. They didn't want a lengthy Japanese name. They wanted something universal, something pronounceable, something brief yet powerful. So they chose a new name. They combined the Latin word for sound with a term suggesting youth and energy. It represented freshness, vitality, audio innovation, and aspirations. They declared, "We're not simply manufacturing products. We're constructing a brand the world will respect." Chapter 2. conquering the giant. The year reached 1955. Inside a tiny Tokyo office with cracked walls and metal shelving, a decision had been made. They would not remain confined to Japan. The time had come to take their invention, this small, powerful transistor radio, and enter the world's most competitive marketplace, the United States of America. Akio sat at his desk holding the radio in his palm. This little device represented their hope, their courage, their future. He didn't simply see a machine. He saw a bridge connecting war-torn Japan with the modern Western world, but now came the most challenging part. He had to leave his homeland, cross the ocean, and convince America, the wealthiest nation on Earth, to trust a Japanese product. Remember, merely 10 years had passed since the war ended. The wounds remained fresh. Many Americans still harbored resentment toward Japanese products. Some refused even to speak with Japanese business people, but Akio didn't care. He believed in what they had created, so he packed a single suitcase containing a few clothes, a dictionary, and 2 transistor radios. He boarded the aircraft and whispered to himself, "They don't know us yet, but someday they will." When Akio arrived in New York City, the scale overwhelmed him. Towering buildings, constant traffic, loud music, rapid conversations. Everything moved 10 times faster than Tokyo. But Akio didn't feel afraid. He felt exhilarated. He rented a modest hotel room. No luxury, no comfort, just a single bed, a desk, and a dream. From that room, he launched his mission to sell their radio to America. Akio started walking from company to company. He had no connections, no scheduled appointments, no interpreter, no translator. He spoke in imperfect English, often using hand gestures, drawing diagrams, and pointing at his radio. Sometimes people simply stared. Some said, "Sorry, we're not interested." Others laughed. "Japanese radio? That won't sell here." He faced rejection repeatedly, but rejection didn't stop him. He had walked through rubble after the war. He had witnessed hunger, failure, poverty. So this was nothing. Each morning he woke up, put on his suit, polished his shoes, picked up the radio, and went out again. Akio noticed something crucial. Many American radios were large, heavy, and expensive. Their radio was small, light, and portable. He changed his pitch. "You can carry music in your pocket. Walk with it. Travel with it. It's for the young generation." That line caught attention, especially from teenagers and music enthusiasts. They had never seen anything like this before. After weeks of struggle, he got a small opportunity. A small electronics shop agreed to take 10 units on trial. If they sold, they'd order more. Akio personally cleaned each radio, packed it carefully, and delivered it to the shop. All 10 radios sold in 2 days. People loved them. Young people returned asking, "Do you have more?" "I want one." The shop owner called Akio and said, "Give me 100 more." Soon after, a large American distributor noticed their radio. They liked it. They wanted to sell it across America, but they had one condition. "We will purchase thousands of your radios, but we will put our name on them. Not your brand, just ours." To any other startup, this would sound like a dream opportunity. This meant millions of dollars in future sales. A guaranteed entry into the U.S. market, security, stability, success. But Akio said no. Even though the company was still small, even though they desperately needed money, he said, "Our name is everything. We don't just sell radios. We are building a brand people will trust. If we remove our name today, nobody will know us tomorrow." It was one of the boldest decisions in business history.